have been called a douche by several people by the size of the vape that
I know.
I got.
I've been there. I was on a quest to get the biggest cloud at one point.
Just satisfying. Yeah, just like the sense of satisfaction you get when you just blow this big cloud out and it fogs up the room for like 10 minutes.
What'd you do this week? Anything good? Anything interesting?
Went to see a magic show yesterday.
Really?
Yeah, up in Louisville. There's 5, 6 magicians. It's pretty cool. I'd never been to one before. So yeah, we went up there. There was a couple of them where I don't know. Like it's like the same old the cliche tricks of cutting a woman in half, and I feel like everybody knows how that trick is done. And I'm just sitting there watching, like, yeah, she's scrunching up to this side. That bar that you're putting down doesn't go the entire length across, so she has room in there, obviously. And I will tell you though, we were talking about this a week or so ago about the stereotypical Democratic voter. Most of the people up there they look like Bernie Sanders, and all their wives look like Hillary Clinton. So we went to the Center for the Performing Arts, Kentucky Center for Performing Arts. And it was just a bunch of probably well-to-do, older white people, didn't have anything better to do on a Saturday. They're all wearing suits. And they go up there to sit down to watch a okay magic show. And I was just looking around. I saw probably 5 people there that I thought was Bernie Sanders first.
Interesting.
They all had, I don't know why it was, but it just.
That'd be great. I'd love to have a bunch of Bernies hanging out.
30,000 people dying every single year. 500,000 people going bankrupt. For what reason? They came down with cancer. I will tell you what the issue is here. The issue is whether the Democratic Party has the guts to stand up to the healthcare industry.
Yeah, they look like Bernie Sanders. They're probably like Hillary Clinton supporters or Joe Biden.
I think that masked magician really ruined magic for a lot of people, I think.
Yeah. There was actually one of the magicians, he brought it up. He, I don't know, made a little joke about it, but masked magician. I don't know. I don't know if it. I think stuff like that. It should run shitty magicians, which was what some of the magicians up there were poor magicians. I feel like, a couple of them were older guys, and they'd probably been doing the same bits since the 70s. And when you have somebody like the masked magician come out and expose all those old tricks, it should be kind of welcomed by that community as an influence, a push. Okay, you got to develop newer, cooler things. You can't keep doing the same old act decade after decade. So, maybe that's just me reading too much into it or thinking about it.
I don't know. If it affected your livelihood, man, I don't know. I think I'd be pretty pissed, but it's trade secrets, man. It's the magician's code. And he made a ton of money off that, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah, good for him. Good for him. Get all these bums and all these half-rate magicians.
Hacks. I could do better magic than that.
I could have. There's a couple of them, yeah.
I tell you what's awesome, the card tricks. Like, you can watch them. They'll teach you how to do them online, and they're extremely difficult because, the sleight of hand required is just, it's insanely high of a sort of skill cap on the card stuff. Yeah,
no, I love and respect that stuff to no end. I've watched, it's Magic for Humans. I like watching the magic shows that come up, especially like the Street Magician type thing. Magic for Humans, the guy, he's got it's 6 episodes or something. And it's really good. And he's actually really funny too.
I watched it. It was very good, yeah.
Yeah, was it the first joke where he's like, pick one of these 6 cards, and whichever one it is, I'm going to give it to you. And he picks one, and it says hug, and then he goes to hug him, and then it reveals the other 5, and they all 5 said anal. I remember I liked it. That's all.
I don't know if you saw this story. Former UK student kills a child in this car accident. A 4-year-old, Marco Shemwell, was crossing the street in Lexington in 2018 when he was struck and killed by Jacob Heil, who was 18 at the time. Heil, who was 18 at the time of the crash, had a blood alcohol level of .051, according to court records. The legal limit for those under 21 is .02. That's terrible, tragic situation, man.
Yeah, I think that's the only way to describe it. It's one of those, but there, for the grace of God, go I. You know, like that could have easily been me. It just happens to be him.
It's like it's the nightmare scenario. You always, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like we're so lucky we got away with this shit. You know, look at this kid.
I just happened to not plow into some kid when I was driving around drinking at that age.
18 years old, and he was .05. That's under, like, you're not even drunk at .05. .08 is the legal limit for adults. I mean, it's so ridiculous, dude.
Yeah, I was at probably 2 or 3 beers, something.
Yeah, it's two, maybe, 3 beers. You're right, over the course of a couple hours.
Yeah, I feel off for the parents of the kid that got killed. And
I feel like it's not sort of justice. It's like retribution. They're going to punish this kid, right? We want to punish people in our criminal justice system. We don't want to.
What do you do? What do you do in this situation? Yeah, I mean, what would you do? You got the reins are in your hand. How do you handle this situation?
Well, what if we put it? Let's let the city of Lexington vote what they should do, right? What would they vote? You think?
I think that they would probably bury the kid. Honestly.
No way, dude. I don't think so.
Because
.05, people know .05 is not.
No, they don't. They know that for themselves. They know that for their families. But when it's somebody else, it's that.
Well, it's not like
somebody else. That's the other person. We're good people. This must be some bad kid doing bad things out there drinking and driving. This is like you hear family members talking about how, well, I think marijuana should be illegal. And it's like, wait. Your son and your daughter both smoke weed, and so did you back in the day. But you're just taking this puritanical stance against everyone else because you just don't know those people. No, I don't trust the mob.
Interesting.
I think they make terrible decisions.
After deliberating for 8 hours, a jury acquitted Jacob Heil of the most serious charge against him of reckless homicide. He was found guilty of DUI. According to an article by Kentucky.com, Heil's attorneys successfully argued that Heil wasn't at fault for the crash because Marco was in the road. Heil's defense team also told jurors Heil was not impaired even though his blood alcohol levels exceeded the legal limit. I purposely mispronounced his name at least twice in order to offend people. Lebanon's economy is collapsing. This has been all over the news. I haven't dug too deeply into this yet. The only thing I wanted to point out about this was the interesting sort of fact about the way their economy works. They have basically privatized utilities, which is what I'm sure a lot of Republicans would love to do to this country. And they have no electricity because they can't afford it, basically, because the economy's collapsed. They can't get foreign currency. Here's a picture of, this is their electric system in Beirut.
Oh.
Look at this, dude. Unregulated free market, baby. Look at this. They have all these diesel generators, and each diesel generator is privately owned, and then you pay the guy with the generator, and then you run your own freaking power line to your house.
And yeah, Lebanon, I mean, Beirut, that used to be the Paris of the East. Back in the 70s, it was like this cosmopolitan,
kind
of place for the rich to go and hang out. And it just collapsed. The whole nation really just collapsed into.
Well, the tourism dried up, coronavirus plus the explosion there.
Well, that big explosion, that was crazy, but I believe they really started falling. It was during the 70s, the Israel-Palestine conflict, where Israel went to war with Lebanon and a couple other, maybe Egypt, Jordan, and I think that's what it was. You had a lot of the war going on. You had the kind of civil strife. You had these different religious groups starting to take power and be in these military organizations and. all the rich people just didn't want to go there anymore.
Very high levels of inequality. And in fact, some of their leadership is being investigated by the French government for like embezzlement and things. It's a pretty detailed, in-depth story. I just wanted to sort of highlight this privatized utility system, how horrifying this is, dude. Could you imagine?
Yeah, that's it's no good. That's no good.
It's hilarious. It's awful, but I think the biggest news of the week was this Facebook blacklist got leaked, right? Dangerous individuals and organizations list was leaked to The Intercept.
I did not see this.
So this is the list. They have the blacklist of Facebook. People have been asking for it for years and years now, and this finally got leaked somehow to, I guess, to The Intercept initially. 90% of these are like, obviously, sort of
I see a lot
Islamic
of
names.
Yeah.
And basically what happens when you're on this list, any reference to your name is flagged, and then the post is like instantly deleted or blocked or whatever.
Huh.
Crime category. Hate category. This is where Kentucky shows up.
Music ban.
Yeah, there's bans on here.
Just like neo-Nazi hate bands or something.
I guess they're assuming it's bands that are cover for
Aryan Guard, Aryan Legacy, Aryan Nations, Aryan Rebels, Aryan Strike Force. Blue-Eyed Devils.
I looked on here. I don't think I'm on this list, surprisingly.
Good.
Militarized social movement category.
Appalachian Rangers. So, there we go. Kentucky and Tennessee, Kentucky Defenders of Liberty Militia. Kentucky Militia, Kentucky Mountain Rangers. There's quite a few of them on there.
Oh, and Kentucky Mountain Rangers Militia. Don't forget them.
Oh. My goodness.
There's more than I thought. Look at all these. There's like 6 or 7 here.
Could you imagine the war going on between them guys? We're the Kentucky Mountain Rangers, and we're the Kentucky Mountain Rangers Militia.
That's like one redneck like banged the other redneck's old lady, so he split off into his own militia.
Yeah, exactly what it is. I bought 5 hydrocodones, and he only gave me 4.
That's pretty good.
I wonder what they did to get on the list.
I don't know. It's a good question.
I mean, this
probably
is
nothing.
Kind of it's been like a continuing debate about why somebody like Donald Trump gets kicked off Facebook, but just say Hamas for example, why they stay on, how they stay on, or certain Islamic State or the Taliban spokesmen. They're
all banned. None of them are allowed on Facebook.
There are some of them that are. Now, I don't know what the workarounds are, but basically, my understanding was that Facebook said, we're not enforcing certain laws outside of Facebook. We only enforce how the individual uses Facebook. So you can have some Taliban spokesman, he can go on there, and if he's following our terms of service, doesn't matter how many people he's beheading. I don't know exactly if that's true, but where somebody like Donald Trump was using the platform and specifically violating the terms of service.
Well, I'd probably make the argument that Hamas is more democratically elected than Trump was. Didn't Trump? Did he lose the popular vote?
I don't know if he did or not the first time. I should know this. I know
the point,
close at the very least.
The point I always make about the Facebook thing is,
yeah, he did. Yeah, he did actually.
You can't sit here and tell me that misinformation is not a problem on Facebook. It really is. It's a problem because of the way the ads work. You can't tell that they're ads. Anybody can buy a Facebook ad, and it just shows up in everybody's feed, and they're not well versed in the technology enough to know that that's an ad that some political group bought. They don't understand. They see a meme, they think, oh, my buddy made this meme. In reality, it was like, the Heritage Foundation or some shit.
Yeah.
Or Turning Points USA is normally who it is.
No, it certainly is a problem. It's such a new problem. Nobody's figured out I guess, a good way to deal with it yet. Be interested to see what happens with it.
Well, Sam Cedar said they should break it up, and that would help. I don't know if that's the best solution, but it would definitely help because, if you get banned off of one of these platforms, you could actually use another one. When it's monopolized the way it is, you don't have that option.
Yeah, for practical purposes, I mean, a lot of these big guys need to just be broke up. I don't know how that looks or what that entails. I mean, certainly there's like different sections, like the Facebook market. Even then, though, like once you start integrating it,
you could at least break up Facebook and Instagram.
Okay, yeah, so you break them up, but you still have, integration between one and the other. I mean, functionally, it's going to be essentially the same thing. Yeah, I guess the only difference is you've got two separate sets of board of directors and CEOs that are kind of managing things, but I mean, they're still going to work together.
You could regulate that, though. You could.
Maybe.
First of all, one thing they could do is legislate the algorithm and make it public. Or they could pass a law that says you can't use an algorithm this way. You can't use it this way to preferentially feed people, information that they are already interested in.
Yeah, that is something I would love to have all these algorithms made public. Whether they be proprietary or not to that company. It's just causing so many issues, putting people in these echo chambers. They're fed whatever that is that they're listening to over and over. And I mean, it's so obviously having this deleterious effect on society and influencing people in all these kind of subconscious ways that and I mean, it wouldn't make any difference to me to know, make it public so that people that understand that stuff can explain it to people like you.
Right. It can be studied and assessed.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, somebody needs to tell me what it is that they're actually doing, and then maybe put some legislation in there to tone down the farming of anger.
Here's a case of a Florida anarchist, and he is facing years in prison for online posts. And he was posting to try to rally support for a action at the Capitol to basically protect the Capitol from riots again. Daniel Baker's sentenced to 44 months in federal prison for social media posts that called for an armed defense against possible far-right attacks on the Capitol. Had no previous criminal convictions. And he's already been in pretrial detention for 10 months in Florida. It's interesting because he's facing more time than anybody on January 6th. And he used some some anarchist kind of rhetoric, but he didn't really do anything. Nothing even happened. Nothing ever came of it. It was just shit he said, basically.
Yeah. Well, I guess it said up at the top that he possible armed resistance to the groups.
Called for an armed defense against possible far right attacks on the Capitol. And they're implying in this article, this is The Intercept, they're implying in this article that this is the judiciary in Florida is very right wing, and this is a Florida case. Let's see, here's a quote from The Intercept. Florida is home to over 60 far-right, white supremacist, and neo-Nazi groups recognized by the Southern Poverty Law Center. And there are well-reported links between Florida police departments and far-right militia. Just the hypocrisy of the whole thing. Half of our government is out in defense of these guys rioting in the Capitol, It's crazy.
Yeah.
Got Venezuela news. The opposition party in Venezuela has been trying to orchestrate a coup, essentially. This is a sort of a complex story I don't want to get too far into, but tensions are definitely heating up between the U.S. and Venezuela. Venezuela said on Saturday it would suspend negotiations with the opposition that were set to resume this weekend. They don't have to do this negotiation with the opposition. They won the vote. But they're basically a U.S. sort of entity. Cape Verde, extradited. Cape Verde is a Portuguese own island off the coast of Africa. Alex Saab has been held there for approximately 1 year. Extradited Colombian businessman Alex Saab, a Venezuelan envoy to the United States on money laundering charges. So one of the sort of attachés of the Venezuelan government is being extradited to the United States for money laundering charges. Very crooked situation, man. I don't want to go too far into it, but this is a potential sort of on-the-ground military action that could potentially happen by U.S. people.
He was doing a very poor job of laundering Oliver North's money. That's what happens. You get extradited.
This case is so crooked, dude. I don't know what else to say about it, except that I hope our country doesn't start murdering people down there, dude. Because they voted that way, you know.
We got to do something. We, troops out of Afghanistan for the most part.
Well, those defense contractors are going to be lobbying for something, aren't they?
Yeah, no, okay. We should do this. We need to do a poll on where we're going next. We got, max 2-3 years before we end up invading some other country.
Well, are we talking a ground invasion? Are we talking bombing?
Okay.
We never stopped bombing, really, with the drone. I mean, are we bombing right now in Yemen?
We're already doing covert actions. We're already doing bombings here and there. I'm saying like an actual where they announce it, how they won't declare war. They're not going to declare war because we don't ever do that anymore. But an actual honest.
Well, because Congress has to declare war, they have to vote on it.
Yeah, they don't. They're not going to do that.
The president can't do that.
But an Afghanistan, Iraq style invasion.
This is so doomer, dude. This is so doomer. We're going to start a war here.
I feel like
I'm not superstitious, but
I feel like we got the Middle East covered with bombs, so we're good there for a while. We got South America covered with covert action and paying these far right
Colombian
military groups. I'm really feeling Southeast Asia again. We're gonna have a Vietnam too. Perhaps.
Who would it be? It would have to be North Korea. There's nobody else.
It would be a proxy. I'm gonna throw this damn phone out. It would have to be a proxy war with China.
Sure, I can see that happening.
Who's allied with China and North Korea? Because ostensibly, we would be having a proxy war with North Korea, but it would actually be a proxy war with China.
The most likely candidate in this region is probably Vietnam, and I can't imagine we would go back in there simply due to the optics of it.
And the war would take place in Papua New Guinea. You heard it here first.
Speaking of China-U.S. tensions, I have an article on that this week as well. China condemns U.S., Canada for sending warships through Taiwan Strait. This is from Reuters, October 17th. On Sunday, the Chinese military condemned the U.S. and Canada for sending aircraft carriers through the Taiwan Strait last week, saying they were threatening peace. China claims Taiwan is its own territory and has mounted repeated Air Force missions into Taiwan's air defense zone over the past year, provoking anger in Taipei. China sent around 150 aircraft into the zone over a 4-day period beginning on October 1st. And the U.S. just this past week, so 2 weeks later, sent 2 aircraft carriers through the Straits of Taiwan, sort of posturing at China. There was a quote. China's People Liberation Army Eastern Theater Command said its forces monitored the ships and, quote, stood guard throughout their passage. So if there's going to be World War III, this will be it.
Yeah, this stuff's scary. It makes me nervous hearing about those types of things.
Yeah,
man, all that stuff goes on. It's just kind of par for the course at this point, where all these nations do this posturing and whatever measuring, but just stop. Can't we all just eat some mushrooms? I don't know.
I don't think China is going to do anything, man. I can't imagine they will. I mean, Taiwan's been pretty democratic since the 80s. Up until that point, they were basically fascist, but these days they're a pretty normal democracy, dude. I can't imagine China would start killing people for historical for what reason?
I mean, I imagine for the same reason that they're doing everything else. They want to be the world hegemony.
I guess so. Yeah, it's a rich island.
Yeah, I mean Taiwan. It's
They could. There's tons of U.S. properties there, though. The problem is, if China took Taiwan over, the U.S., they would nationalize a ton of U.S. Unless they made a deal. If they make a deal, that wouldn't happen, I guess.
I don't know. It's
scary, though.
It is scary. Sanjay Gupta went on Rogan. Sanjay Gupta, he's kind of the head doctor, CNN. He's got a show on CNN. He's a medical guy. Yeah, go ahead and play this. And they talk quite a bit about a number of different issues. And this
tell me when to stop it.
Do we know what the long?
It's only 50 seconds long, so we get close to the end.
Comes from the vaccine are?
Okay.
I don't think we don't know. And I think the only way we can know long-term things, to be perfectly honest, of any of these aspects of the vaccine, the only way we can know long-term stuff is with the passage of time, for certain.
That's terrifying for parents.
It
the
is.
idea that your son could get vaccinated and most likely he would have been fine if he got COVID, and that your son could catch myocarditis and have permanent heart problems.
I don't know that we can say a person will be fine if they get COVID, Joe.
A young boy?
Well,
most young boys with no
when you
comorbidities.
Say fine, you mean what? That they're not going to die?
I mean, like me. I had COVID.
You look like you're strong as an ox. Yes, I give you that. But you get teenagers who.
Okay, yeah,
Is this recent?
3 days ago. So Joe makes the point. What drove me crazy about this was just the mischaracterizations kind of across the board about kind of what was said and what was going on. But Joe makes a point, or he says, "Hey, should people that are not like there are now documented negative effects from the vaccine, and we know that they are much higher in certain groups of people. For postmenopausal women that get the Pfizer, I think it's the Pfizer vaccine, have a pretty high incidence of blood clots. Teenage boys in particular have a very high incidence of myocarditis, it's inflammation of the heart.
I wouldn't characterize it as a very high. I mean,
it is certainly higher than base level and higher than the incidence of similar negative effects caused by COVID in that age group. And so Joe makes the point, hey, if it's riskier for teenage boys to get this as opposed to not get it, and most likely they're going to be fine anyways, why do they need to get it? And then he also goes on to make the point about people that have already had COVID, why are they needing to get the vaccine? Because people that had COVID, the studies are showing that they have a stronger immunity towards COVID than people that have just been vaccinated. And, obviously the data is still to come out, but it's a valid question. And what kind of struck me about watching this, Sanjay Gupta, he's a doctor, he's on CNN, he's in contact with the White House. He did not have answers for any of these things. He just kind of broke down stuttering and didn't really.
Because he's a TV doctor. He didn't have on. There's other doctors that are making the rounds that work in this field, that he could have had.
I mean,
on.
he was bringing up studies, but when he seemed prepared to answer like your Sanjay Gupta seemed prepared to answer the Fox News version of pushback against the vaccine, kind of the poorly thought out conspiracy theorist memes going around about it. And I don't know. I mean, I thought it was an interesting question about why people why they're requiring vaccines for people that have already had COVID, that are going to have, hands down, the data shows they're going to have a higher incidence, but they're still requiring it of those people, or people that are healthy that are going to be fine when they get it, if they got COVID. And well,
it only lasts a year for one. For one, it only lasts a year. I mean, this is so simple to me. I don't understand the confusion about this.
What only lasts a year?
The vaccine. Okay, the immunity. You're referring to the immunity provided by having COVID, correct? Yeah, that lasts like a year or something.
Yeah, so they go into this. The immunity provided by the vaccine.
That's based on data from Israel. It's not allowed, but
the data that we have that's come out shows that this is why they're starting to require booster shots, not just in Israel, but in England and the U.S., because the immunity provided by the vaccine only lasts like 6 months. So
So what's your point?
The point is, if you've had it and if you've had COVID and you are provided with, it does a better job of protecting you than getting the shot. Why would that person then go risk the very small chance, but real chance of negative effects of the vaccine? Let
me explain this for everybody. Let me explain this for everybody. The vaccine gives you the spike protein. The virus also gives you the spike protein plus a bunch of other adverse results. Long COVID can happen with children. It does. There's no situation where a vaccine is going to be more dangerous to anyone in any area than actually getting COVID. COVID is always going to be more dangerous. We don't even know the long-term effects yet.
Not in certain populations, apparently.
Yes, that's not true. How just logically, how would it work? If you understand what the vaccine is, it's very simple. It's a part of the virus. It's just smaller. It's a smaller amount. Well, no, first off, virus.
No. Two of the vaccines are not smaller parts. This is what the whole part about.
Okay, it's a protein that binds to your.
It is a gene therapy. It is a treatment, more or less, as opposed to a traditional vaccine. Some of the other questions come about the delivery method. Yeah, so you have the spike protein that goes in and makes your body start producing these things, but there's different delivery methods on how it gets into your body. Those can cause issues. I mean, basically, it's come down to a numbers thing. And for certain populations, there is a higher incidence of long-term bad effects with the vaccine than there is with COVID.
According to the most recent New York Times article on this subject, for every 1 million boys in this cohort who received the vaccine, there could be a maximum of 70 myocarditis cases. However, in that same 1 million, there would be 5,700 infections, 215 hospitalizations, and 2 deaths. I'm now quoting the article. Studies have also shown that the risk of heart problems after COVID-19 is much higher than after the vaccination.
And that's what also, and I don't know. I
don't think you're right about that, but I have an argument.
Okay.
Besides
so
that.
Sanjay Gupta, who is a doctor, I know he's a TV guy. He is a doctor.
Right.
He did not refute these studies. He was not saying these things were wrong. And that's what struck me, is that he wasn't saying, this information is not correct. He just kept saying, we'll just get the vaccine too.
This is what Sam Harris said. This is the same thing Sam Harris said. When you're in a debate with somebody, you can't sit here and pull up studies, Sam Harris just said that not too long ago. He won't debate these guys.
Okay. Yes, he was talking about stuff like Brett Weinstein bringing up some random study out there. Sanjay Gupta was familiar and accepting the studies that Joe was bringing.
So you're saying not like there's some cohort of people for whom the vaccine is more dangerous than getting the virus.
Teenage boys for sure. Healthier people.
What about teachers that the teenage boys have to be taught by? Do we not care about them?
No, of course I care about them.
They're older. They have a much higher chance of actually being hurt by the fucking virus.
Yeah, so they do need to be vaccinated. Certainly. So there's
the kids too. The kids need to be vaccinated also. You can get COVID with the vaccine. If both people are vaccinated, the risk is going to be lower.
Yeah, if one person already had COVID, their chance of getting a breakthrough case of COVID is going to be lower than if they just had.
Well, then they've already their whole body's been flushed with the spike protein. What's the difference if they get the vaccine or not? I mean, I agree with you. It's probably not necessary, but it can't hurt. That's my point.
Okay, but
it certainly can't hurt.
It can hurt.
Through what mechanism?
Through whatever mechanism is giving teenage boys myocarditis.
Well, the studies you're talking about, if they exist, are comparing people with the vaccine to people with COVID, not people with the vaccine and COVID to people with just COVID.
All right.
There's no studies of that.
You're explaining to me studies that I've just told you about that you haven't heard of. All right, so
what I'm saying.
This is.
Let me say it again.
Okay.
The study, what you're referencing, I'm sure, is people who got COVID compared to people who got the vaccine, and we just said that. You purport that there's some cohort of people for whom the vaccine is more dangerous than the virus. What I'm saying is there is no study of people who have got the virus and the vaccine compared to people who only got the virus. There's no study there.
We're looking at
it can't hurt, is what I'm saying.
Well, it can hurt if you're one of those people that is susceptible to having these adverse reactions. That's the whole point.
But those people aren't having adverse reactions to the vaccine if they've already had COVID.
Yes, and if you don't have the adverse reaction, your chances of you're already better off than somebody that's had the vaccine. And there's no, I guess the point is that there's no reason you're not going to be more immune. If you've just got COVID 3 months ago and then you get a vaccine,
probably not. Yeah,
the vaccine immunity is going to wear off before your natural immunity wears off at that point.
I think what they're concerned about is people with false positives or people lying about saying they had COVID.
Yeah. So I mean, certainly in those cases, you want to have tests available for them to take every day.
Well, what if it's a false positive?
Or every week, whatever. Well, you just isolate for a couple of days, however long, till you get a negative COVID test.
But what I'm saying is, what if they never had it? What if they got a false positive? They thought they had it, but they never did, and then they give it to their teacher and kill them.
I mean, I don't know. You would have to. I'm not advocating this position. My point is that
I see your point. You're probably.
He didn't have a good explanation for this, and he is a doctor. I don't know what his medical.
I know he should have been ready for this, dude.
He's a neurosurgeon. He was not saying, hey, these are studies out of some weird country that don't really say this. You know, he was not throwing the Brett Weinstein Sam Harris critique at him. He accepted these studies and said that they were accurate, and he just did not have a good explanation for why certain populations shouldn't at least consider the fact that maybe they just don't need the vaccine, especially if they've already had COVID. But, you know, you would take all the other precautions, obviously. You don't want to take to school.
I just don't see scientifically how it could hurt. I just don't. If you've already had COVID, it's not. You know what I mean?
I don't either, but apparently it does. Apparently it does.
I'll take a look at that because I had not seen any studies like that comparing.
And my understanding was it's not necessarily.
I wonder if they're referencing the database because they have this database where anybody can call and sort of bitch about.
Yeah, that's pain. The Bears.
Bears, yeah.
Yeah. I think these studies were mostly coming out of Israel and England and some other place. And they're just meta studies where they're just comparing the numbers. I mean, this is not conclusive. You know, we don't know. I imagine that
it's interesting. I can't imagine what the mechanism would be though. But like I said, this thing is unusual for sure.
Yeah, and from my understanding, it's not necessarily the vaccine itself, the protein that they're putting in, but there's the delivery method. Whatever the solution is that everything is in, apparently that can cause a problem. Okay, yeah. So, and on top of all this, this kind of had the backdrop of it was brought up. So CNN kept saying that Joe Rogan had taken horse dewormer.
I'm curious what your position is on this.
All right. So yeah, he said he had. All right. So Joe called Sanjay Gupta out on CNN repeatedly saying that
they lied.
Rogan
they
had
lied.
taken Ivermectin, which is a horse dewormer, and this is
sure.
Yeah, if you just want to go ahead and play it.
But he did say something about ivermectin that I think wasn't actually correct about CNN and lying, okay? Ivermectin is a drug that is commonly used as a horse dewormer. So it is not a lie to say that the drug is used as a horse dewormer. I think that's important, and it is not approved for COVID. Correct?
That's right. That's correct. It is not approved for
COVID. Okay, that's good.
You're right.
Yeah, so the whole issue was, this is just kind of funny. It's not really of any consequence. Well, I guess it is of consequence because when these things come up, when people start having these debates, one of the big issues is people don't trust the media. And this seems silly, but this is a reason that people don't trust the media.
The Jewish media, you mean?
The same. Just characterizing ivermectin is a horse dewormer. It is also a human medicine with all sorts of different uses. So I have right here my prescription bottle of canine anti-seizure medication. Now you can characterize it and you can call it canine anti-seizure medication, or you could say it's Xanax, which is what it, you know, it's I don't know, it was just a scummy way. And there's a couple other videos.
You think it was scummy by CNN?
Oh, of course, yeah. It was scummy by CNN to characterize it. It was just a cheap, stupid shot. But and I don't care necessarily if they say it, but when they do stuff like that, people like me, it's just one more reason not to watch CNN. I don't watch it anyways, but there's a lot of people that maybe do watch it from time to time. And when they hear stuff like this, it's just blatant lying.
Well, I have two arguments I would make.
It throws out all your credibility. If you lie over something as dumb as this, some stupid little, just want to take a little jab at him, and then go back and try to walk back and keep that same argument in place when it's just been blown out of the water.
How's it been blown out of the water? It's a horse dewormer. He took a horse dewormer for a virus.
You took
anti-seizure medicine for a dog for a human. This is not an antiviral. This is an anti-parasitic.
It's an anti-parasitic. It is used to deworm horses. It is an anti-parasitic. It's an anti-parasitic. He was not.
This is not a parasite. It's a virus. It's a different organism. It's a fucking horse dewormer.
It's being prescribed all over the world, and there are a number of cases. So there's a case of some state in India where they've just knocked down COVID to next to nothing, and they went around and basically just gave everybody ivermectin as a treatment to it to help people get through it. They still got it, but it helped them move past it really quick. So
interesting. I haven't seen any data to suggest that it's useful at all for COVID.
I mean, there's literally doctors all over the world that are prescribed for that, and then they make.
That doesn't mean it's useful. There have to be studies done.
Well, there has to be studies done to prove its efficacy to federal licensing boards.
Right.
So I wanted to liken this. Everybody making these articles, I've seen this all over Twitter. Well, it's not approved or it's not a recognized therapeutic for COVID.
That's a shitty argument. Yeah.
It is a shitty argument. Because you could say the same thing about marijuana. That marijuana
say the same thing about anything. None of this shit is all called off-label.
Yeah, it's off-label, obviously. So anyway,
my whole point is it's not a freaking parasitic. It's not an antiviral. It's an antiparasitic. It doesn't even make sense, and there's no data that I've seen. For one, for two, isn't there an argument to say, hey, people with a platform that large who are spreading that much misinformation should be criticized openly and just laughed at and made fun of in this way?
I'm not sure. All right, so this would be a whole thing about what misinformation he's misspreading. I mean, he's saying that he was prescribed this. That it's not misinformation to say, hey, my doctor prescribed me this.
There's an argument you could make on both sides of that one. How about the argument that, hey, we need a counterpoint to Fox News. Fox News is doing this shit and they're getting away with it. So why can't Rachel Maddow do the same thing?
Do what thing is that?
The sort of biased shock, the entertainment /news thing.
I think
Clickbait.
Rachel Maddow does, doesn't she?
Well, that's what I'm saying. You're saying the CNN shouldn't do this, and
Well, no, I'm not saying. So I don't have a problem with somebody being left-leaning, right-leaning, giving this spin or that spin on things. What he said was just a lie, and it was a calculated.
I don't know if I'd call it a lie.
It was a calculated, dishonest spin on something to make people think a certain thing. This is this crazy guy that's taking these wild, he's using crystals and horse.
He didn't get vaccinated. He's taking ivermectin instead of getting vaccinated. So you guys don't have to get vaccinated. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. Well, he explains all that. It's pretty interesting. But the other thing was this CNN, when they posted Joe's video where he says that he has COVID, they put a yellow filter on it. And so so go to the second to the last one is Anderson Cooper originally saying that he was taking the horse dewormer. And it's got a little Instagram video of Joe making him look like really sick.
What?
News this evening, Joe Rogan,
Anderson Cooper?
an extremely popular podcaster, announced on
right there?
No.
What are you talking about?
No, there's a video. It'll get to it. It's not very far in.
Young, healthy people don't need to get vaccinated. In his statement on social media, Rogan said he has taken several therapeutics to recover.
Crystals and ivermectin.
All right here. Okay. So that right there, he looks jaundiced, right?
He's all gray and ashy.
Okay, and then the last link is the actual Instagram video taken from Joe's Instagram. If you put it upside, it's so very obviously.
So this compared to this.
Look at it.
That's not the same video, is it?
That's the same video. That's the
pretty
same video. They put a yellow filter on it because look, he's taking horse dewormer and it turned him yellow. He's jaundiced. He's gonna die.
I don't care. I don't feel bad about Joe Rogan, dude.
I don't either. Joe's gonna be fine, but it's have some self-respect, CNN. You used to be something. You used to be the
He
place
made that
people went
endorsement
to.
of Bernie. He made that endorsement of Bernie, and then ever since then, he's been so far to the right, dude. It's like, just, he must have got some pushback from his rich buddies, I guess.
Maybe. I don't know.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you are interested in nootropics, check out my website. We are still running free shipping through the fall. Time is almost up, though, guys. If you have been thinking about trying nootropics, try them now. Go to my website, MetamaxPerformance.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, Shire Hemp Farms, your #1 source for CBD and Delta 8 products, along with other ethnobotanical ginseng, yellow root. Come check us out. We've got great prices on all our products. We have a new podcast discount code. This is ESPOD Winter. Winter's coming. Get your Delta 8. Stay home on a cold day and come check us out, ShireHempFarms.com.
Columbus Day is dead. It's gone. We got rid of it, right? It's Indigenous Peoples Day now. How do you feel about that one?
Well, as an Italian, I take great offense. Christopher Columbus was a great Guinea, Wop, Dago, whom us Italians love very much. And, there's been a lot of propaganda, and I just showed conclusively in the last segment, the media is lying to you.
Indigenous Peoples Rebellion in southern Mexico. In the mid-'90s, they took over Chiapas, the southernmost state in Mexico, and they've been running the area democratically ever since.
Cuando irrumpimos e interrumpimos en 1994 con sangre y fuego, no iniciaba la guerra para nosotros los zapatistas.
Que es un movimiento para todos, que defendemos nuestras tierras.
We defend our land, our natural resources, our Mother Earth. So, this is one of the sort of current iterations of anarchism in action in the world today. There's a few more that we'll get to eventually at some point, but I wanted to talk about the Zapatistas this week. This is an area that is majority indigenous population, and they have a long history of revolutions, actually. Let me see if I can show a picture of Chiapas here. Bam, there it is. The southernmost state in Mexico here. It's also the poorest state in Mexico, I should say.
Yeah, right beside Guatemala down there. So I guess that's the entry point for all the Central American refugees that kind of come up through Chiapas.
Well, yeah, any sort of refugees on the way to America for sure, over to the U.S. I should say. I want to go through a little bit of the history. I'll try to do this quickly. The Mexico, most people don't really know, but Mexico was a one-party dictatorship essentially for most of its lifespan since independence from Spain. The PRI ruled Mexico since the 1920s, and they took up the mantle of a left-wing party, but you know how that goes. It started out as a left-wing party, slowly moved to the right, as these things do. These days, it's a corporatist, authoritarian party. And in 1969, the FLN formed in northern Mexico under Cesar Munoz, and they operated in Chiapas, among other places. This was the beginning, this was the second revolution, sort of. In 1974, a battle between the Mexican army and the FLN took place. Some members of the FLN were tortured and executed by the Mexican army, and this crushed the FLN. They were gone after that. Some of the members, the more revolutionary members, formed a new organization, the EZLN, which is the Zapatista Army of National Liberation, the Zapatistas. There are members in the north, in the urban areas, that are non-indigenous, and then there are the indigenous members in Chiapas, and they are both part of the EZLN. They travel around and have sort of meetings and stuff. You know how them lefty guys are.
They love their meetings.
This formed with the help of the liberation theology movement. Have you heard of this?
I have, actually.
Liberation theology has been described as an interpretation of Christian faith out of the experience of the poor. The best-known form of liberation theology is that which developed in Latin America in the 1950s. However, various other forms of liberation theology have since developed, including Asian, Black, and Palestinian liberation theologies. Latin American liberation theology met opposition in the United States, which accused it of using Marxist concepts. The Vatican rejected certain forms of Latin American liberation theology for focusing on institutionalized or systemic sin, and for identifying Catholic Church hierarchy in South America as members of the same privileged class that had long been oppressing indigenous populations from the arrival of Pizarro onward.
Somewhat popularized by Amy Goodman from Democracy Now! She reported on it. And in 1994, on January 1st, the day that NAFTA went into effect, the Zapatistas essentially declared war on the Mexican government. Because NAFTA, among other things, this is a neoliberal trade agreement that a ton of United States jobs went to Mexico, hurt workers in the United States. It also hurt workers in Mexico, in particular the indigenous people who were supposed to be given land in these agrarian reforms.
Well, specifically what happened with this, for Mexico, because Mexico initially was not going to join NAFTA, I guess it's like a full partner. This was obviously during Clinton's administration.
Mm-hmm.
What they required Mexico to do was to change, I forget the section, I tried to remember it, but it was a change a part of their constitution. This section in particular,
Article 27 of the Mexican Constitution is what's listed here.
So you've got it. And what it did, it provided certain parts of certain segments of land to be used as public land. And this was very important for the very poor, the indigenous peoples, where they could go there, they could grow crops, they could make some sort of living off of it. They didn't have to buy the land. It was just theirs by virtue of them having lived there and having access to it. And so the change to the Constitution would do away with this public land and would basically put it up for, I think my understanding was it would require that it be put up for sale by the government for whomever to buy, and it most likely be some sort of business interest.
Not poor indigenous people, probably.
Most likely not, unless they've been saving their nickels. But yeah, so these people this is one of the things they got upset about, and rightly so. They pushed back and said, hey, we need to keep these things available for the poor indigenous populations so that they can make a living off this land that they've been making a living off of. Anyway.
They had been fighting for 2 decades. To get any sort of concessions from the Mexican government for the indigenous people that live there. The people who rightly, have more claim to the land than anybody else, certainly.
Yeah.
Just on a property rights sort of context, you would think. They'd basically declared war on the Mexican government. 3,000 Zapatista insurgents seized most of the states in Chiapas. Here's a nice photograph of some Zapatistas in 94. So small. This guy is cheesing for the camera here, pointing the gun at the camera, and this guy behind him is like, grow up.
Dude, come on. Get real.
Look at that look. So the first thing they did after seizing Chiapas, they freed prisoners in San Cristobal de las Casas and burned several police buildings and military barracks. And the very next day, the Mexican army attacked them, and they retreated into the jungles after taking a lot of casualties. Cathedral of San Cristobal. This is one of the areas that's really helped the Zapatistas. One of the Catholic Church down here.
Where's Sagar and Jetty's church?
Is he Catholic?
No, you said it's the Church of Crystal Ball. Remember, that's his co-host. It's not
geez.
a great joke. Jeez, God, Tony, get off.
Here's some actual footage. Let's see if I can get away with this.
Plaza vacía, Palacio Municipal vacío, silencio, ¿no? Y viene mucha gente del pueblo cercano, chopiscas que son de ellos, tienen que atravesar precisamente la zona militar.
They had to go back through the militarized zones. The Mexican army attacked. The Zapatistas retreated into the jungles. On January 12th, so a week and a half later, a ceasefire was called, and this was brokered by the Catholic diocese. In February 1955, the Mexican army overran the remaining territory the Zapatistas controlled, and they again fled into the jungles. So a year later. And the Zapatistas were under siege for quite a while in the jungles there. But they were hanging on. And a stroke of luck, the Mexican Secretary of the Interior, Esteban Moctezuma, campaigned for a peaceful solution to the siege. And he, in fact, resigned his position in solidarity with the Zapatistas. This is Moctezuma. He submitted his resignation in solidarity with the Zapatistas, and that put quite a bit of pressure on the Mexican government. President Zedillo refused to accept his resignation, but decided to heed his calls for a peaceful solution. The main spokesman for the Zapatistas, Comandante Marcos, after the siege was lifted, he was allowed to escape the jungles. So he survived that harrowing situation. He was surrounded in the jungle, and he did escape. The Zapatistas survived, and they brokered peace, thanks to President Zedillo and this Esteban Moctezuma. Amazingly.
They didn't have a bunch of Navy SEALs come down there and just wipe them out.
The U.S. must have been preoccupied at this time, I guess.
Yeah.
Here's a little bit of Marcos.
Ustedes puedan oír la nuestra personalmente.
This is an interview by Zacdela Rocha. Zacdela Rocha's great-grandfather fought in the Mexican Revolution, apparently, so he's super interested in these guys.
Yeah. Guys were practicing COVID restrictions back in the day. Wear the mask, fellas.
El apoyo de la Comisión Nacional para la Democracia y el uso del sistema de video para poder mandarles este saludo. Así que, good luck.
I just wanted to check him out. He's not very interesting to interview, but that's what he sounds like, and that's what he looks like. A new president, a right-wing president in the early 2000s, Vicente Fox, agreed to withdraw troops from Chiapas because they still had these paramilitaries down there, and they still do. But this guy is super interesting, man. Vicente Fox, he's a right-wing populist Trump guy, but he famously stated that he's not going to pay for the fucking wall. Because remember when Trump was like, I'm going to make them pay for it. Vicente Fox was like, I'm not going to pay for no fucking wall.
Yeah.
And he has this picture here. I don't know if he was serious or if he was just trying to garner some international fame. He looks like the type of guy that...
It works. I don't know anything about the guy, but I like him already.
I don't know. It seems like he would be friends with Trump, but I don't know. What do I know? Of course, Trump would fire himself, wouldn't he?
Yeah, he would.
Later on, he apologized in a Breitbart interview where he called Trump ignorant, crazy, and egocentric. So Marcos demanded in these negotiations that the paramilitary groups in Chiapas be disarmed. Obviously, they wanted the Mexican military out of Chiapas. In 2001, the Zapatistas marched to Mexico City under President Vicente Fox, and they were pressuring the Mexican Congress to implement these land reforms that they had initially, this was what it was all about, these land reforms, to give the peasants some land. Here's the famous photo of Marcos. Bam.
Got the cigar. That's
got a pipe through the mask.
Is it? It's a pipe?
Yeah.
Yeah. I need a painting like that of myself. Everybody, I don't know. I feel like this is emotional manipulation. You can't have a photo taken in combat fatigues with a pipe on a horse and not have people think you're not a badass.
What's with the horse? I mean, I guess because of nature and stuff. Why wouldn't you have a four-wheeler? I don't know.
In that interview, he had a horse in the background. I mean, I guess they use them.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, I mean, you're going through the jungle. It's, I don't know.
You don't have to put gas in the damn thing, I guess. I don't know. They never reached a deal with Vicente. The Zapatistas unilaterally created 32 new autonomous municipalities in Chiapas. They had some international funding from some sort of fringe left-wing groups that are into this sort of stuff, but they didn't have any government support whatsoever. And since then, they have been trying to basically democratically run Chiapas through these autonomous municipalities in a anarchist fashion. Very cool. Is a photo of the municipalities. And they're actually in 4 or 5, depending on what source you look at, provinces, but these are municipalities of approximately 300 families. And we'll go into it a little bit more here in a sec. Let's finish the history. In 2005, the Zapatistas presented the 6th Declaration of the Lacandan Jungle. The document declared their principles and support for indigenous people and solidarity with the people of Cuba, Bolivia, and others. This was a declaration of autonomous intent and solidarity with the working class, essentially. In 2006, the EZLN, or the Zapatistas, participated in demonstrations protesting the forcible removal of flower vendors in Texcoco for the construction of a Walmart. The feds bust in 5,000 agents to fight the Zapatistas, supporting these flower vendors. Following days saw 216 arrests, 30 rape accusations against the police, 5 deportations, and 1 casualty, a 14-year-old boy. Shortly after, another person died after being in a coma from being struck in the head with a tear gas canister. In 2006 and 2007, Marcos continued to garner support from other indigenous groups in the Americas. And in 2009, the Zapatistas declared their support for the Palestinians. They're doing it, man. They did it before anybody else, the modern ones. Looks like reminds me of the Boy Scouts, the Boy Scout uniforms we had back in the day.
Yeah. This is probably Trip 22 or something.
They're working on their merit badges.
Jungle Combat Merit Badge.
Rode a horse for 5 miles.
Strangled a capitalist farm owner with my bare hands.
In 2012, so this is 3 years later, 40,000 Zapatistas and Zapatista supporters marched throughout the states of Chiapas in solidarity. These were called the silent marches.
They must be doing something right to have all this free time marching around.
Well, they're not pursuing material interests, I imagine.
Could you imagine having that sort of left-wing organization in the U.S.?
Man,
you could get large percentages of the population together to march
40,000 people,
to another.
Right?
Oh, yeah, 40,000 people to march on a major city, just silently just walk through it.
Well, man, so many people around the world have spoke out in support of them. Of course, the same is true of the Palestinians. It's just a different situation. The Zapatistas continuously documented attacks and assassinations against indigenous leaders and supporters throughout Chiapas. The Mexican military is split up into these different organizations like the Army, the Navy. They all carry out independent missions. There's a lot of paramilitaries, I'm sure, with private funding down there, attacking indigenous people. But they try to document all this stuff. In 2014, Marcos declared that his position of leadership had been a hologram and was no longer. This was interpreted by the international community to mean that he was announcing his retirement. But he's still around. He announced his retirement, but he's still around. He goes by Galeano. How do you say it? He changed his name after his buddy died to his buddy's name. He's a writer. He was a writer.
Active and rotating self-government with their own autonomous education system, autonomous healthcare system, production cooperatives and societies, the recovery of the local economy, their own system of administration of justice, in other words, their own legal system, which is much fairer than the federal Mexican legal system, tremendous promotion of young people and of women into positions of importance in the self-government process. So it's really exciting to see what is possible to achieve if you control your own territory and if you have a different vision of how society could be organized.
The Zapatistas had intended to stay out of politics, but they're sort of a political force down there now. And in 2017, they selected a woman, Maria Martinez, to run for president. She didn't get enough signatures. They need 866,000 signatures to get on the ballot down there, and she wasn't able to. But in 2017, Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador founded Morena. This is the new progressive party in Mexico, and they are in power to this day, Morena. And in 2019, Marcos announced expansion of the EZLN into 11 new districts. Moreno President Lopez Obrador stated that the expansion was welcome, provided it was done without violence. And that's what the Zapatistas have been saying for like over a decade now. They're trying to avoid any sort of violence. And here's the president, the Morena president, Obrador. Just a little bit of him. He's pretty cool, man.
Mexico has an extraordinary history. It is a story of a struggle for freedom, for justice, for equality, a struggle to defend our national sovereignty. In the history of Mexico, there are three major transformations. The first was independence.
So he's talking about the revolutions. Cool guy, man. All right, let's talk about the political structure a little bit. So the Zapatistas are still not officially recognized by Mexico, and there are privately funded paramilitary groups that operate in the area. And their whole goal is to break up the Zapatista movement. Women are an integral part of society in Chiapas. Because this is pretty similar. What they're doing here is pretty similar to what I advocate for. The autonomous municipalities. They're called the MAREZ, M-A-R-E-Z. That's an acronym. They're coordinated by autonomous councils, and their main objectives have been to promote education and health in the territories. They also fight for land rights, labor and trade, housing and fuel supply issues. They promote the arts, especially indigenous art, and they administer justice. So the MAREZ here on the bottom, these are 300 families, approximately 300 families per MAREZ. These are sort of like cities or counties that we have here. They, in negotiations, they strive for a consensus, so they argue until they can get a consensus or get close. But if they can't, they will fall back to a majority. The MAREZ itself, so the county owns the private property, not the personal property, but the private property. So that would be factories, anything that requires multiple people to operate. So farmland, factories, that sort of thing. Each MAREZ has their own laws, and they enforce their own laws with their own law enforcement officials. And they pay taxes to the municipality in which they are for services the municipality provides, such as, health care and roads, things that require coordination between MAREZ. And they call the municipalities here the councils of good government. These are the people who actually carry out the decisions that are made at the municipalities. And the way federation works, instead of the MAREZ here, instead of them electing representatives to be in the municipality, Congress, or whatever, they have delegates. And the delegates have to do what they're told. And in federation, instead of sort of the municipalities voting on issues, each municipality that is affected by potential legislation has to agree. It has to be a consensus. So if they want to build a road that goes through all four municipalities, then all four municipalities would have to agree. That's how federation works. So that way, 3 municipalities couldn't pass a law that says we're going to enslave the last municipality. Not really that complicated. It's just instituting. Whoops. How did I go there?
Oh, Michael Malice. No, it's not. And That's kind of what it intrigues me and worries me about stuff like that. Like, yeah, it seems all very. It seems a bit too simple.
Well, it's just instituting direct democracy principles as much as possible. That should be the goal, right? Why is that not the goal?
I would say no. I agree with that as much as possible. I don't know. I don't know, but I would worry. I would think there's a lot of complexity to government on the higher stages.
Sure.
And,
shoot. What's your issue? Let's do it.
Okay. Laws.
Go wrong.
I mean, what?
Each Marez has their own laws, right?
They're allowed to make whatever laws they want, or are they bound by some sort of constitution on the higher end?
I would advocate for a Bill of Rights, a national Bill of Rights, but that's just me. What I'm advocating for, this is loose, right? This is the Indigenous Zapatistas. They're not. This isn't like hard in stone. I'm going to advocate for my position, basically. I would advocate for a Bill of Rights, but yeah, essentially, principles of direct democracy. You can pass whatever law you want as long as you're not infringing on other people's, rights.
Okay, I mean, so that would have to be a law that you can't infringe on other people's rights.
Sure, I guess if you need to make that a law, yeah, sure.
I mean, I think you would, because that's. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. What if Michael Malice again coming up?
I know it's on my playlist. I guess.
Tell us what's going on. Listen, we need to have big corporations to come in there and let them make their laws, and you can whatever. I don't know.
Corporations could operate as co-ops. They would be co-ops. They would be paid by the municipality or the county, however you want to say it, and the municipality would distribute goods to the community. Actually, the Marez, I guess, would distribute. So envision this.
Okay. I mean, I do like the idea of delegates over representatives.
For sure.
I
I mean, that
need
seems
to do that
obvious.
a lot more. Yeah, it is. It really is obvious.
And the way I know, let me put this one more time back up. I know how here it says councils of good government at the top. The councils of good government is literally just people that the municipalities agree upon. Like, they need people to carry out these laws. So they say they pass a law to build a new hospital or whatever, right? So the people they would send to go build the hospital, you'd have to have officials, and that's the councils of good government. So they're not above the municipality and the Marez. They're literally the tools of the municipalities. See, this is confusing for me to talk about because municipalities in my mind are the counties or the Marezes, but in Chiapas they call them Marezes. The municipalities are the regions, right?
Yeah,
a little confusing, but
yeah, I wonder how they deal with like big corporate interests. Some corporation comes down there and they say, "Hey, we want this Marez. You've got some minerals underneath."
There's no private property. They can't buy it. It's not for sale. The Marez owns everything.
No, the Marez, they say, hey, we're going to give everybody here, they're poor indigenous farmers, we're going to give you all $10,000. 10,000 times 300, that's what, $30 million. $30 million is nothing for an oil company. We're going to give $30 million and we're going to buy the rights to this land, and now you have to work. Like there's so many ways. Obviously, it's not, my understanding is, it's not happening there, but
they don't have any oil. It's a very poor region. Maybe that's why they're still alive and kicking down there.
Hey, we're gonna cut down this bit of jungle and plant some banana farms.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have any.
Well, if it was in the Bill of Rights, that there's no private property, then that wouldn't be an issue. They wouldn't be allowed to sell the property.
Okay, so they can't.
Or in the national constitution, however you want to sort of phrase it.
The Marez doesn't own it then.
The Marez does own all the private property in that.
The Marez
area
would be able to sell it on a.
And by own, I mean, it's a communal system, right? They don't own it in terms of like they couldn't sell it out from under the residents because it's the Marez is run by the residents. All the residents would agree to sell to Texaco or something, is what you're saying.
They could. I mean, if Texaco comes down there, started. I mean. Look, man, this happens in the U.S. all the time. Misinformation. You go around there, start spreading lies, start throwing money around, promising people jobs, promising the world, and what recourse do they have? What protects them? And this is where I feel like you kind of need federal legislation, and direct democracy kind of falters, because this is what we were talking about with Facebook. People are easily manipulated, and
somebody would sell out.
Oh, I think a lot of people would. I mean, it's not happening, so there's something holding it back. I mean, I don't have critiques of it. I just have questions about how they're dealing. How
they would survive in a global environment is really your question.
Yeah,
it's a good question. There's a reason there's not too many of these things.
Yeah.
There's one in Europe, and there's one here in Mexico.
I mean, I think you would also. It probably works in a place like that. I'm guessing. They just have such it's probably almost a cultural thing. We can work out all these problems, but there's this culture of, this is our land, communal ownership. We deal with our problems internally. We deal with, we don't want the influence. The whole point of this is that we're pushing back against the outside influence. But it's literally just me making stuff up right now. I don't know.
Well, see, if you try to sell out your community members, your coworkers. Here comes Marcos on his horse. Hey, what are you doing, buddy? I'm very disappointed in you.
But all these Merezes, look, they all just got free Wi-Fi. Now they're on Facebook, and they're getting all these memes talking about how, I don't know, what's their version of, you can't say Marxist, because then they'd be like, yeah, of course he's a Marxist.
They don't associate themselves with any movement, including the anarchist movement.
Okay. Well, just wait till Facebook gets a hold of it. That's all I'm saying.
You're right about that. I've thought about
direct democracy is out the window once you have Facebook manipulation. The almighty algorithm.
The capitalist media single-handedly brought down the Soviet Union. I mean, this is a serious issue that we can discuss at length. But yeah, I agree with you. I mean,
It's all been a sham.